Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Makin Waves, our inside look at Roosevelt University athletics. Coming up, we'll have a pair of chats with Nic Paquiz, the women's volleyball coach here at Roosevelt, along with head football coach Billy McKeon. But first, let's take a look at the week in review here at Roosevelt University. Starting off with football, the Lakers on the road for the first time last Saturday here in 2025. Game was stretched out by several hours of weather delays, and in the end, the Lakers dropping a 38-21 decision to Wisconsin Oshkosh. Cam Davis, Chico Thomas Jr., and Jack Young Jr. all getting touchdowns in the game for the Lakers. Moving on to soccer, and on the men's side, the Lakers played to a pair of draws this past week. The first match was a 1-1 draw against Lewis, while in the second match, the Lakers tying Purdue Northwest in their GLIAC Conference opener 2-2, the final in that match. In the combined two matches, the Lakers getting goals from Alexander Abaya, Noah Vasilev, and Finn Mevis, as the Lakers continuing on with their 2025 schedule. Meanwhile, tough going for the women's soccer team, which had a pair of losses during the week, falling 4-2 to Northern Michigan and 3-1 to Michigan Tech. Women's volleyball this past week, the Lakers coming up short in both of their matches, first against Parkside and then against Purdue Northwest in their home opener at the Goodman Center for 2025. Moving on to tennis, both the men's and women's teams facing the Milwaukee School of Engineering in their matches this week, with the men's team dropping a close 4-3 decision, while the women's team cruised to a 7-0 shutout in their contest. And finally, wrapping it up with golf, one contest as the Lakers finishing 12th at the University of Indy Invitational in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's a look at our week in review. We'll take a break. Be back with more right after this timeout on Makin Waves.
From our first day, Roosevelt has been a place for all. Before it was widely accepted, Dr. Edward Sparling stood for social justice. When asked to take a racial and religious census, he simply responded, "We don't count that way." And 62 faculty members walked out with him. Together, they founded Roosevelt University, a place for you to belong.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of Makin Waves as we continue on with our inside look at Roosevelt University athletics. Joined now this week by Roosevelt University women's volleyball coach Nic Paquiz. And, Coach, thank you for joining us this week. It's been a start of a season where there have been some challenges. How have you assessed the way the season has gone so far?
I think we're right where we should be, right? With some of the challenges that we faced, I think we've been able to adjust pretty quickly. But it doesn't really give us a lot of time, considering the turnaround that we've been going through from fall camp to preseason and now conference. And yeah, we're getting ready to make our UP trip. But for the most part, yeah, I like where we're going and I like the progress that we're making.
You mentioned it almost sounds like a kind of a compressed time frame. Maybe that's not the best way to put it, but it sounds like a lot of things happen very quickly as the season approaches, and now you're already almost 10, 11 matches into the season now.
Yeah, we're it's hard for me to believe that already next week is going to be October, right? And we kind of dub October as being championship month, right? We want to be playing our best volleyball in preparation for conference. But yet with that, as you mentioned, all the events that are happening, it makes it a little bit more challenging and difficult to kind of get the things that we want to get done so quickly. So it takes time, but I think the team's been really patient, and all we can ask is for them to continue to keep moving forward.
You mentioned as well how the season has gone along. You feel you're right where you want to be. Do you look many times at more than just the wins and losses in assessing how a team's progress is going?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of variables, especially at least with us, right? In the sense of just the transition year, competing in the GLIAC top to bottom. I mean, this conference is tough, and we knew that going in, and so it's for us. Or you can't determine your success by your wins and losses, right? We determine our success by the growth that's happening in our gym. And those are the things that a lot of people don't see. But when we go out to actually put it to the test on match day, that's where we can truly see our growth and our success. And as long as we keep moving forward, I'm happy.
One of the things going to that point that I thought really shows that the team is continuing to progress, and that is the situation in your home opener. First set down 24-20, and you reeled off 4 straight. You saved 4 set points in a row to keep the set alive. Ultimately, you didn't prevail, but that had to be something that it shows a lot of character, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we've spoken to this in the locker room, in our gym. From our first match to our last match, we've felt there's been at least one set that we've been able to control. I think the key for us is trying to find that consistency and to be able to sustain that consistency throughout an entire match. That's hard to do, especially when you're bringing in 8 new people. So that we were always kind of talking about how it's going to be a chemistry experiment, trying to figure out what's going to give us that lineup or that dynamic that's going to get us some of those W's. But it's at least very hopeful, and when we are being competitive against each team that we're playing against. But like I said earlier, it's just a matter of being consistent throughout the whole entire match.
Going back to that particular situation too, what was impressive was the fact that it was obviously probably a little bit of a disappointing and demoralizing loss in that set, but the team bounced back, remained competitive the entire match, and that's a key, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's. I think as a coach, that's what you want, right? We've always been talking about how are we going to respond in those situations. We're gonna have our mistakes, we're gonna have our failures, but critical to us is how we respond in those situations. So, yeah, fighting in that first, coming back and fighting from behind, and then coming within 2 points and dropping that first set, but yet answering in that second set. That's always something that we enjoy seeing. It's a fun set to coach, but at the same time too, that's the consistency and the level of play that we want to be able to be at.
Talked a moment ago about chemistry and bringing now on 8 new players for this season, and it is kind of trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle, isn't it? Trying to find out what works best in any given situation.
Yeah, it's I think this is one of the years though where we feel pretty good because of the fact that we have depth, right? And even though we might be able to figure out that puzzle on one day, maybe that puzzle looks a little bit different on another, right? But again, I think it's all just based on our preparation and just making sure that the next person's up is ready to go. But having that depth is critical too, especially as we get deeper in the season, right? It's a long season. We still have a lot of volleyball left. Conference, it's funny to think that it just started, but at the same time too, there's a lot of work to be done. So having that depth and having those numbers in the gym definitely makes it helpful.
Staying on the puzzle theme, if I may, and I'm wondering, do the pieces change depending on the next opponent? Do you have to make a lot of adjustments during the season as to what to do and when and who to play and where, given the particular opponent?
Yeah, I think that's required, and that's something that we need to do, right? It's not always going to be that one lineup that's going to do all the work, right? We have to prep. We have to make sure that we understand who our opponent's going to be. Exploit their flaws, and sometimes it's going to look differently on our side for us to be able to do that.
Just a question about volleyball in general, and this again is to the untrained eye as far as volleyball. Is it reactionary volleyball in many cases? Because it seems to me, again, to the untrained eye, that if one thing goes a little bit maybe unexpectedly, you've got to react very quickly.
Yeah, it's we've been kind of talking primarily to our offense about having a plan, but I think that can cover a lot of ground on our team, right? I think it's important that we have to kind of understand what each individual role is, and for them, it's really kind of understanding what that is, but also scenarios, right? The game of volleyball is very fast. We have to be able to adjust, pivot, adapt, right, to any given situation. So there's always this ABCs. We always talk about ABCs as well too, right? If we're doing the one thing, there's going to be another thing that we have to prepare for. So it's just kind of understanding what those situations may be, and then being confident and comfortable that we can execute.
When you're on the sidelines early in a match, are there specific things that you're looking for to try to get a clue as to how the match will progress, or maybe what adjustments you might make?
Yeah, usually we kind of wait. The coaching staff and I, we wait to see what our opponents are going to do, right? Because we could scout all we want, we could prepare all we want, but then at the same time too, we can't forget our opponents are doing the same exact thing to us. So we just want to see what they're going to be able to do, and then hopefully, adapt and change and make any type of changes that or modifications that we need to in order to execute our game plan to still stay on track.
Is volleyball unique in that way, in that things can change on the fly, not only with the team that you might be coaching, but also with the opponent?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think our sport kind of works out that way. You really never know what's going to happen, and so you just have to again be comfortable and confident, knowing that you prepared for any situation, right? But there is a lot of we've talked about this before. Maybe not as much this year, but there's a level of imagination and improvisation that you have to be able to do in our sport, right? It's not going to always be cut and dry. A lot of times there are going to be things that we just have to be able to respond to, and it might be something very unorthodox, but it might work. But that's our sport sometimes.
Do you ever look back after a match and you think to yourself, the flow of the match or the pace of the match, it really didn't go the way you thought it might have, and that you had to make a lot of adjustments?
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, we again, as coaches too, we try our best to make the best decisions, but we're not going to always be perfect. So yeah, a lot of reflection ends up happening, especially after going back, watching film and kind of looking at scenarios and thinking about, okay, what are better decisions that we as a staff can make in order to get a better result.
Going back again to the concept of volleyball being such a quick sport, and I'm just curious, how fast does it go from a coach's standpoint when you're in a match?
I think for the time I've been doing this, it gets, I don't know if easier is the right word. There are certain ways in our sport that you can slow the game down, right? And a lot of it is, I think from a coach's perspective, it's understanding the game and reading it and seeing it. And a lot of times it's just about seeing plays develop. And then with the experience that we have, just understanding and knowing what should be happening next. I think that's kind of the trick, right? That's what we're trying to teach our team as far as identifying certain situations and then being able to respond accordingly.
When you're in the heat of a match and when you're trying to observe what's going on, are there situations where it seems like the match may be going in slow motion because you're looking for things that I might not be, or the spectators in the stands might be, because you have so many years of coaching experience, you know what to look for? Does that kind of stretch it out, at least psychologically, and does it seem like maybe it's going in slow motion at times?
At times, right? I think with so many variables kind of happening, you like to think that if the game is slowing down, it's because we're making it slow down. But it doesn't always happen that way. But I think it's, in those situations, though, it does give us an opportunity to kind of see what's happening on the court, and then being able to make any type of adjustments that we need to.
Can that be a difficult task, trying to make the match slow down, especially when maybe things aren't going the way you want them to?
Yeah. There's definitely styles of games that certain teams like. Teams like to play fast. Other teams like to, control the tempo of the match in different ways. I think the idea or the trick and the challenge is to try to gain that control somehow, right? But if we could do that every time, I'd be a happy person.
You talked about gaining control as well, and that has to be, I think, a kind of a special challenge, because it seems to me, again, as an observer and almost as an amateur observer, momentum switches so fast in volleyball, doesn't it?
Yeah, it can switch in a fraction of a second. You never really know. It's such a momentum sport. But you kind of ride it as you get it. But at the same time too, we don't want that to be the controlling point where we're just going to wait for it to kind of come on our side and then ride that wave, so to speak. We want to be able to create that momentum, right? And I think that's a big key factor for us as far as how we think we could be successful moving forward.
Mentioned earlier on, heading into the conference season, we're already on the verge of moving into, as you said, the month of October. Do you feel that the preseason or the quote unquote preseason, the non-conference schedule, is giving you good preparation for the conference season that lies ahead?
Yeah, I think so. You know, the team played a pretty challenging and difficult preseason. You know, we pretty much saw every type of style game that we can see, which is what you always want in a preseason schedule. So yeah, I think it's helped us prepare, but you know, again, it can only help you so much. You know, the rest of the work needs to be by us, and we got to be able to do the things that we're wanting to do. But for the most part, yeah, being able to just even see someone else, you know, after being in fall camp for a week and a half or so, to be able to compete against someone else aside from ourselves, it's always a good thing.
Looking ahead to the GLIAC season here in 2025, and one of the things that's always been a constant in our chats with the various coaches here on Makin Waves, and that is that they have constantly stressed, and some of the players have as well, no days off. There's no downtime here. You cannot rest 1 second. You have to be constantly trying to be on top of your game. And do you find that that's been the case as well as you begin to move through the GLIAC schedule and in volleyball in general?
You know, I think every year kind of looks different for us. You know, the whole idea of, you know, I think for me, it's always been more about the quality, right? And you know, the longevity is something that we try to pay attention to and remind ourselves every day. You know, it's a long season, and we ask our student athletes to compete at a high level on and off the court. So you know, in our eyes, it's mandatory at times where we need to be able to give them that break, whether it's a mental break or a physical break. Because the idea is that we want to be playing, like I mentioned earlier, our best volleyball in October, more so toward the end of October. You know, by that time, you know, you're coming toward the tail end of your season, and you're hoping that the team's playing on firing on all cylinders, right? So in order to do that, though, we need to make sure that holistically that, you know, they're in good shape, whether it's giving them that extra day off that they need, do treatment, whatever it is that we need to in order to recharge and reset in order for us to be able to compete at that high level that we're hoping to.
As you move into the GLIAC season, how tough of a conference is it? All conferences are tough, but it seems, in my experience now, second year in the GLIAC, that the competition in the GLIAC seems to be tougher maybe than many of the conferences around the country.
Top to bottom, especially this year, the GLIAC is tough. There's no easy days. You know, at least with, you know, what we talk to our team and our student athletes about, you know, when you're competing at this type of level, there's a very, 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 very small margin of error that you can make. And so that's something that, of course, we're going to pay attention to. But, you know, I think we're up for the challenge, you know, week in and week out. It's going to be a daunting schedule. But at the same time, too, we understand that this is what is going to make us better. You know, we want to be one of those teams that's competing at the top half, top tier. And we understand, like, in order to do that, you know, this is the level of competition that we want to be exposed to.
Does volleyball lend itself to having a lot of parity, or is it more of a situation where, as you said, top tier, and then you try to work your way up to that top tier?
Oh, man. That's a tough question. I almost feel like sometimes I'm still trying to figure that out, regardless of how many years I've been doing this. But you know, I think it's, as long as we have that in mind and we're putting in the work day in and day out and the effort behind it, and reminding ourselves about why we're here, then, you know, eventually I think we're going to get there, right?
Talked about your years of experience. Do you ever find yourself looking at a situation and saying, I thought I'd seen everything, but I know I haven't? I know that that's something that I've had to go through many times, and I'm wondering if that can be the case for yourself as well.
Yeah, and you know, I think every year something always. I can't really pinpoint anything exactly, but I'm lucky and fortunate enough to have been doing this for as long as I have. But I think those even instances or cases, it's part, not entirely, but it's part of what brings me back and why I enjoy doing what I do. But yeah, nothing. There's always something that kind of surprises me or just doesn't. Yeah, it makes me chuckle.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll wrap it up. Coach Paquiz, thanks for joining us here on Making Waves.
Thank you.
And good luck as the season continues.
Appreciate it.
Coach Nic Paquiz with us here on this edition of Making Waves. We're going to pause, take a time out, and come back with more right after this on Making Waves.
From our first day, Roosevelt has been a place for all. Before it was widely accepted, Dr. Edward Sparling stood for social justice. When asked to take a racial and religious census, he simply responded, "We don't count that way." And 62 faculty members walked out with him. Together, they founded Roosevelt University, a place for you to belong.
Continuing on this week's edition of Making Waves, our inside look at Roosevelt University athletics, and joined now by Roosevelt University football coach Billy McKeon. And Coach, thanks for joining us this week, getting a little bit of a rest before your next game, but looking back, what a wild Saturday this past Saturday, a game that was stretched out by multiple weather delays, wound up coming up short after a very good first half. What kind of a day was it for you, the coaching staff, and the team?
Yeah, it was obviously a bit of a roller coaster of ups and downs of sitting around for a long time and trying to keep people in it and trying to get as much information as we could. So that was an interesting experience. I've never really been in a weather delay where there wasn't really any weather going on. If you looked outside, we stood outside most of the time as coaches and it was sunny and pleasant out. So, but lightning off the lake there a couple miles away. So, their system had that detection and we were sitting out and waiting. But yeah, long day for sure.
How did you handle those weather delays? They were quite lengthy. We had several times where the game staff would come into our booth and said, "There's a reset, another 30 minutes." They just seem to be going on and on and on. How were you able to handle that with the team and again, in regards to the overall framework of the game?
Yeah. The first big one was during halftime, right? So, we had a very, very extended halftime, probably over an hour there. And we were able to use our technology and kind of go back and review some of the stuff from the game that had happened already. So we had made some corrections and made some adjustments at that time. And the next couple weather delays, you're kind of in a holding pattern, really, just kind of waiting and getting information, probably the same as you were getting it. Their baseball coach was kind of tasked with that for us. So he was coming by and giving us the update when it was 30 more minutes. And, I'm just, every time he told me it was 30 minutes, I wrote down on my sheet and said, all right, here we go. It's 6:18. We're back out there, whatever the time was. So just trying to keep that fresh and going. So.
As the game played out, you were in a situation where the team was in front 21-14 at the half. And what changed in the second half?
Well, we turned the ball over. We give it to them 3 times in the second half there, and they were able to capitalize on two of those attempts and get another score as well. So, that we got to take care of the ball. It really is what it comes down to. There was a lot of good things out there for us, and we just didn't quite make the plays. So.
Was that a case, again, I think we talked about it during the pregame interview, of needing to execute on every single snap, because if something goes wrong, it can change the momentum of a game in a heartbeat, can it?
Yeah, and just, consistency, all 11 guys doing their job consistently will get us there, but we had a guy screw up here or a guy miss there and this, and a couple guys on this one. And, when that happens, it could be the difference in the game. The details are so important there.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, and that was the defense. You talked about turning the ball over. The defense had to go through a lot of reps in the second half, and while the point total wound up to be 38 on the board at the end of the game, I thought that was a little bit misleading because the defense, they made some crucial stops that kept the team in the game, didn't they?
Yeah. We offensively, we put them in some bad spots there, and that's third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter with a couple interceptions there, and the first one, they go out there and get a stop and, force a field goal attempt and they miss it. And we get the ball back and we give it right back in one play. So, we got to play better team football and that's really it, and give those guys a chance to recover and be fresh as they get back out there. So,
was there one point in the game that you thought maybe facilitated the turnaround?
No, not really. It's just a matter of, they went and made a play and we maybe made a bad decision. We missed a protection pickup there and kind of forced Zach to kind of get out and throw it against his body. A throw I know he wishes he had back and but it all started with a simple error in protection and he tried to force it and make a play and that one comes back right away. And then they end up getting a score. So. That was kind of a turning point, and then it felt like, man, we got to find a way to get a stop, and then at that point we'd put them out there. The offense had put the defense on the field a little too much, and they were a little fatigued, and they got taken advantage of.
They were tired at the end, the defense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that momentum is a real thing. You start to feel that ball rolling a little bit, and you got to go out there and make a play and do your job better than they're doing their job, and if you do that, you'll get back on track. But too many of those compound and we put them in a bad spot.
How difficult is that? As you mentioned, the momentum kind of swinging, and when the momentum is not going your way, how difficult is it to try to turn that around? It's not an easy task, is it?
No, you're certainly not going to be able to flip it completely. It's just kind of a small wins, small victories, small, chunks and getting it back to kind of level and then going and shooting your shot and taking your chance to spin it in your favor and provide that spark. So it's if you're trying to overhaul it all in one play, we talk about all the time, like you can't score 10 points on a touchdown, you only get 6 of them. So you got to incrementally get back to it. So.
Kind of like a baseball situation. You can't hit a 5-run home run, can you?
That's correct.
There's a similar analogy for football, isn't there?
Yep. You can't. Yeah, exactly. You can't. Everybody's got to continue to do it at the microscopic level the best you can, and then that'll add up to be the big picture.
Talking about the big picture and looking back at a game like last Saturday, I got to believe that you go back and you kind of try to pick it apart to try to learn the lessons so that you can be able to move forward and have better results as the weeks go by.
Yeah, certainly. A lot of our guys graded out all right, played pretty well. It's just a matter of the one play here, or critical errors, and that's the difference. I think as a team, though, we really played more good football, more good ball than we did the previous 2 games. So it's just when you have critical mistakes, then some of those good things are swept under the rug a little bit.
Football is the type of game, it seems to me, that when you have a mistake at the wrong time, regardless of which team it is and whether you're on the positive side or a negative side of it, just in general, a mistake at a different time or a particular time can have much more of an effect than maybe a mistake at a different time of the game.
Yeah, I think you hear coaches say it in post-game interviews all the time. It wasn't that play that was the difference in the game. There was a bunch of plays throughout the game, but that one was at a critical moment, or that was a turning point, a memorable moment in the game. So you try to limit mistakes and all of those things, but ultimately, football happens, and there's going to be some turmoil. That's kind of the beauty of the game at the same time, right? So we'd like to be on the other side of that, but the harder we work, the luckier we'll get. So we'll keep that up.
One other key, I would think, when you're trying to put together a game plan and you're going through the game is to try to not get in a position where one play can maybe turn things around. Obviously, you were mentioning that many times it's not necessarily one play, but there is a situation where momentum can turn around, and you try to get not to have yourself in that position, don't you? Yeah,
we talk about playing team football, and setting each other up in all 3 phases in good spots. And when you consistently put one of the other phases in a bad spot, there's only so many punches that they have. So we got to do a better job of kind of controlling those things and making sure that we're playing better team football all the way around.
Now you have a week off before you start the GLIAC schedule coming up here in 2025, back at home a little more than a week after we're taping this interview. Is that a good thing? Do you welcome bye weeks, or are you the type of coach that wants to keep playing week after week?
Well, I'm a sicko a little bit. I want to play football every day, So, but that's not the nature of our game. So, it's good. It's got some benefits to it. I think as our players get a chance to kind of recompete, with each other and have some more competition periods this week during practice, and that's been fun. That's what they like. That's what I like. That's what everybody likes in the sport, right? So, we want to get after it a little bit instead of getting as much, kind of prep periods and scout periods and stuff like that. We're still doing a little bit of that, but we're able to kind of get after it and get some adrenaline going and get some enthusiasm going with some competition. So that's been good. But it is, sometimes difficult on the coaches to kind of, we want to go back and self-scout and try to figure out some of the tendencies that we might have. But you get yourself into a rhythm, and when that rhythm gets a little off, then you got to start back into it. So, it's got its pluses and minuses. It's certainly for our players a chance to get a little bit healthy, recover a little bit, extra day off or two, and for us coaches that we're chomping, especially after a game like we just played. So.
Do you make a lot of dramatic changes as far as how you plan things out during a bye week, or do you try to keep it as consistent as possible?
Well, we're going to go through and we've gone through and looked at all of our stuff and making sure that, hey, what do we need to kind of focus on moving forward? What are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? What needs to get scrapped and what do we need to add? So just kind of taking a zoomed out view of that as a program and so that's been good. And, there's a lot of positives to take from. A lot of good teaching moments to take from too situationally. So, that part's been really good for us as staff.
One of the things that I think might be a positive for the bye week is that it does give you, especially the way it was scheduled this year, the way the bye week fell, you get a little bit of a breather before taking on such a tough GLIAC schedule. We say it every season. We were just talking with the women's volleyball coach, Nic Paquiz, about how tough the GLIAC is, and that is the case in every sport, and not the least of which it's the case in football.
Absolutely, yeah. You want to play good teams, you want good challenges. So we're excited to get to that. That's what we're building towards as these 3 non-conference games went. So we get a chance to take a step back and evaluate a little bit and look ahead and kind of get a big picture of our opponents to come and really excited about getting into really good football, really good league, and knowing that mistakes are gonna be a big part of those games in terms of the results. So, but we're really excited to get into a little bit more familiar opponents after playing them around last year and watching them a lot on tape through the summer, and as you reviewed games and stuff and previewed games last year. So we got some familiarity. There's obviously going to be some wrinkles and some people different, but it's exciting to get back into that league, and such a great league and so competitive. I can't wait to get there.
Your answer brings 2 questions to mind. The first is that do you feel that the non-conference schedule has given you very good preparation as you move into the conference part of the season?
Yeah, I think it certainly allows you to see your strengths and your weaknesses. We played some good solid programs that are playing good football. So that exposes any weaknesses and any issues that you might have within. If you were to go play some teams that were maybe a little bit lesser or a little bit easier games, you might some of those things might be hidden and lost in the result and the celebration of a victory. But we're able to kind of zoom in and see, like, hey, this is what we need to work on. This is where we need to improve, as a whole team. And that sets us up to get into a tough schedule.
Second question has to do, again, with the GLIAC competition, top to bottom. No easy weeks. Again, the consistent theme is no days off when you're playing at this level, and I suspect that is the approach that you're taking as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, but, you get into a bye week, you do get a little bit of time, right? So we do want to make sure that we're getting the time to refresh and recover a little bit. But yeah, your mind is on the future and the games to come for sure.
Maybe no letdown might be a better way to phrase it, and I'm sure that's your approach.
Correct. No going backwards. Always taking steps forward. Even if that's if it's a day off, it's a recovery day. Are you working to get your body right? Are you refreshing your brain? You know what I mean? And taking care of your mental health and everything as you continue to stay focused and don't get lost in the momentum of the season and everything that goes with that. So
one of the fascinating things about football, and you touched upon it in our pregame interview last week, is that there's more practice time than game time. And there's so much importance on a single game week in and week out because very simply there just aren't that many games in comparison to most other sports. You have, in your case, 10 games this year, and so every game is almost like week one, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much weight into it, and you try to make that realization for our players. You know, as they get into the schedule of school and weightlifting and conditioning and meetings and practice. You know, you can get lost in that. But we try to make that real clear. Like, hey, there's only so many opportunities. You know, and if you're not working towards and you're not intentional with your work and planning your work, you know, you're missing out on a really great opportunity, and you're going to be working the rest of the 52 weeks of the year to get back to one more opportunity. So, you know, just kind of making sure that we understand the importance of not losing a day, not going backwards, not staying even, getting better each week. And you know, that's really important for our guys to kind of zoom out a little bit too and look and go, oh man, hey, in 2 months, you know, we're back to just the weight room grind. You know, we don't get to go out to the field every day. So it happens quick, you know, but it's the beauty of it too.
How quick does it go by every season? I know it's a long season, and you mentioned again more practice than gameplay, but it always seems to go by in a heartbeat, doesn't it?
It really does, you know. And you know, my wife made mention of it. You know, she goes, "Well, you're exactly halfway through the season." And I started looking at it like we only played 3 games, and we get 10 of them. And she goes, "Well, you started camp here, and then now you're on the back half." I go, okay, yeah, you're right. I guess that's true. You know, I'm not much of a countdown guy. I don't like those days slipping away on you. You know, so but yeah, we're in it. It goes fast, and the longer you coach, the longer you're a part of it, the faster those things go. So yeah.
As you enter the second half of the season, as we begin to wrap it up here with Coach Billy McKeon here on Makin Waves, it does sound like you feel you're well positioned to continue to try to have success as the season goes along.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're excited to see, you know, our process and the things that we've done differently this year. Then go get those challenges that we had last year. You know, we played in some tight games last year that we thought, you know, a play here, a play there. We had a chance to get a victory in, and you know, the adjustments and the changes that we've made to kind of build towards those moments. You know, want to put them to the test. You know, you want our guys to take all that work from the off season, the weight room, and in the classroom, in the meeting room, and all that stuff, and then go shoot their shot in those big moments and those big games.
All right, Coach. Well, I'm sure you'll make the most of the week off, and thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you back at Morris Field when the season resumes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
Head football coach Billy McKeon with us on this edition of Makin Waves. We're going to pause, take a quick time out, come back with more right after this on Makin Waves.
From our first day, Roosevelt has been a place for all, an incubator for inconvenient ideas, an origin point for change, and above all else, a place for you to belong.
Welcome back as we begin to wind things down for this edition of Makin Waves, our inside look at Roosevelt athletics and previewing the week ahead at Roosevelt University. No football this weekend as the Lakers have an off week. They will be returning home for the GLIAC Conference season opener next week against Ferris State. That'll be at Morris Field on October the 4th. It'll be a busy weekend ahead for both soccer teams with a pair of doubleheaders on Friday and Sunday. On Friday, the women's team will host Purdue Northwest, while the men's team will be taking on Parkside. And then on Sunday, the women's team will be facing Ferris State, while the men's team will host Northern Michigan. The women's volleyball team will be back on the court with a couple of road matches at Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan, while in addition, the women's and men's cross-country teams will be at the Lucien Rosa Invite in Kenosha, Wisconsin. The men's tennis team will be in action at the ITA Regionals in Allendale, Michigan, while men's bowling will be on the lanes in the Hammer Golden Eagle Invite in Rockford, Illinois. And then wrapping it up with men's golf, they will be at the Motor City Invite in Detroit, Michigan. That'll wrap up our edition of Makin Waves for this week. Until next time, thanks for watching, and so long.